Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now, let's get into today's tale. My parents spent my $12,000 emergency savings to redo the living room. "We thought you'd understand," my mom said. But when my boss found out why I was sleeping in my car, everything changed. I grew up in a small town called Poughkeepsie, New York. Nothing too special, just a patch of suburbia with strip malls, old diners, and a decent view of the Hudson if you knew where to look. My parents, Elena and Marcus, were what you'd call proudly average high school sweethearts. Never moved more than a few miles from where they grew up. My dad was a freelance mechanic and handyman. My mom worked at a dentist's office for nearly 2 decades. We weren't poor growing up, but we didn't have extras. Vacations meant camping in state parks or driving out to my aunt's house in Scrun Lake. Still, my parents made a big deal about being responsible with money. They made me get a job at 16, lectured me about credit cards, and talked endlessly about saving for a rainy day. I took all of that seriously. When I went to college, SUNY New Pulse, they co-signed a student account for me. I kept it even after graduation because it was just easier. I figured, hey, I'm the only one using it, and I trust them. Why change it? Big mistake. After graduating, I got a job in Albany doing admin work for a tech consulting firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid okay. I kept my expenses low. Tiny 1-bedroom apartment, cooked at home, never went on vacations. Every month I funneled whatever I could into that savings account. I never touched it. I was proud of that $12,000. Might not sound like much to some people, but for me it represented 5 years of discipline and sacrifice. It was for emergencies, real ones, job loss, medical bills, car breakdowns. Never once did I think it would be used to throw pillows and a new entertainment unit. In March of last year, I got laid off. It was one of those cold corporate mass layoffs. Our department got wiped clean in a Tuesday morning Zoom meeting that lasted 10 minutes. No warning, no real explanation. I didn't panic at first. I had my savings, I had a decent resume. I figured I'd bounce back in a month or 2. I called my parents later that day just to talk. Didn't even bring up the layoff. I didn't want to worry them. 2 days later, my mom called me. She sounded chipper. "Oh, honey, you should see the house. We finally did it. New floors, a giant sectional from that Italian place I love, and we knocked out that awful wall. It's so open now." I was quiet for a second. Wow, that must have cost a fortune. "Oh, well," she said suddenly. "Coy, we sort of used your savings." I didn't understand at first. "What do you mean? You know the account we co-signed back in college? We thought you'd closed it or moved your money." "No, Mom. That was my emergency fund. It's the same account I've been saving into for 5 years." There was a pause. "Well, we only used part of it, just under $12,000, and we figured you'd be okay with it. You weren't really using it, and we thought you'd understand." I can still hear her voice saying that. "We thought you'd understand." It felt like the air was sucked out of the room. I told her I'd just lost my job, that I'd been relying on that money to get me through this, that I had rent due in 2 weeks. She didn't know what to say. She just kept apologizing and offering to let me move back home. "You can sleep on the new sectional," she said. "It's really comfortable." I couldn't even respond. I just hung up. The days after that were a blur of anxiety and shame. I applied to jobs like a maniac. I sent out over 100 resumes, rewrote my cover letters a dozen times, even applied to places I never would have considered before. Retail, food service, telemarketing, nothing. Silence. A few rejections, mostly just nothing. Rent came due. My landlord gave me a grace period, but it wasn't long. I sold what I could. Furniture, electronics, bought clothes, but it wasn't enough. My unemployment benefits hadn't kicked in yet, and I was too proud to ask friends for help. So I packed what I could into my car: blankets, canned food, some clothes, a flashlight. I parked behind a Target off Central Avenue and cried myself to sleep in the back seat. I never told anyone. I made up stories, told friends I was house-sitting for a coworker, told my old roommate I was staying with family. I'd shower at the gym, sit in cafes all day with my laptop, pretending to work, and sleep in the car at night. Every time I heard footsteps or saw headlights, my heart would race. I never felt safe, but I also felt invisible. Then something changed. Grant, my old manager from my previous job, emailed me, just one line. "Still in Albany?" I hadn't spoken to him since the layoff. He was a no-nonsense guy. Ex-military, straight to the point, but fair. I'd always liked him. He told me he was working on a contract gig in Saratoga Springs and needed someone to handle the logistics. It wasn't permanent, but it paid $30 per hour and would last 3 months. I said yes immediately. I didn't tell him about the car. I showed up every day looking as put together as I could manage, wearing business casual and keeping my laptop charged, at coffee shops. One afternoon after a meeting, he asked me if I was still driving that ancient Honda. "Yeah," I laughed. "She still runs." "Are you living out of it?" I froze. I tried to deny it. He just looked at me, not judging, not angry, just watching. "I'm fine," I muttered. "It's temporary." "You're not fine," he said. "Get your stuff. You're staying at my place." "What?" "I've got a duplex in Troy. Upstairs is rented, downstairs is empty. Nothing fancy, but it has heat and a bed, and it's yours for now." I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to accept, but I was so tired. I hadn't slept in a real bed in weeks. That night, I moved into his guest unit. It was a tiny studio, old carpet, secondhand furniture, but it was heaven. I took the longest shower of my life. I ate a warm meal, slept under a roof without fear. I cried the whole next morning. I settled into the Troy duplex like a stray animal, trying not to knock over the furniture. The first week was awkward. Grant didn't hover or ask questions, but I could feel the weight of his generosity every time I passed him in the shared driveway. I kept thinking, I need to earn this. I need to prove I'm worth this. So I worked like hell. The project he brought me on to involved vendor contracts for a regional logistics startup, messy back-end data, overlapping invoices, and half-written policy documents. It was tedious, but it was kind of tedious. Within a few days, I had cleaned up their vendor database and renegotiated 3 contracts, saving them about $18,000 a year. When Grant saw the numbers, he just whistled low and said, "Remind me why they laid you off again?" We fell into a rhythm. He respected my space, never made me feel like a charity case. Sometimes we'd have coffee after work. We never talked about the car or the night he found out I was living in it. Instead, we talked about systems efficiency and strategy. He seemed genuinely impressed with how I thought through problems. "Have you ever thought about starting your own consulting business?" he asked one evening while we sat on the porch drinking tea. Spring was finally warming up the air. "Sure," I said with a shrug, "but that takes money, clients, a real network." "You've got the brains," he said, glancing sideways at me. "The rest can be built." I laughed it off, but the idea planted itself quietly, persistently. I didn't tell my parents where I was. After the initial phone call and a few frantic texts, I stopped responding. My mom left voicemails, first apologetic, then defensive, then just silent sobbing. My dad never reached out. Not once. They didn't understand what they'd done. It wasn't just about the money. It was that they looked at the sum of my sacrifices. 5 years of saying no to dinners, trips, new clothes, coffee, and decided it was just sitting there and used like it didn't matter. "We thought you'd understand." The words echoed in my head like a taunt. After a month in the duplex, I had stabilized. I paid Grant a small amount for utilities and groceries, even though he refused rent. I took on small freelance work to pad my income. Invoice management for a boutique shop in Schenectady, spreadsheet audits for a friend of a friend's catering company. Word spread. I wasn't advertising, but people started emailing me. By July, I had 10 clients. Nothing huge, but enough to make me wonder if maybe Grant wasn't crazy after all. Then came the call from Vanessa. She was a mid-tier executive at a transportation company based in Buffalo. She said she'd been referred to me by someone who worked with Grant on a previous contract. They were in desperate need of someone to untangle a year's worth of shipping and billing chaos before their annual audit. She needed me for 3 months, pay $50 per hour, remote. I told her I'd think about it, then immediately called Grant. "I know her," he said. "Smart, ruthless. She wouldn't hire you if she didn't think you were the real deal." That night, I updated my resume. Not because I needed to send it anywhere, but because it was time. I wasn't just someone who got laid off. Anymore, I was running my own show. I accepted the job the next morning. The Buffalo contract opened a door I didn't realize was there. With that on my resume, clients took me more seriously. I was able to raise my rates. Zai moved in with 2 suitcases and a chipped mug I'd kept from college. Everything else had been sold or donated when I lost the apartment in Albany. I didn't care. Didn't care. I made toast, sat on the floor, and watched the sunset over the Hudson. I hadn't felt that kind of peace in years. My parents still didn't know where I was. They'd send a card at some point. A thinking of you greeting with a handwritten note. "We're still your parents. We love you. Please come visit. The couch is waiting." It made me sick, like they thought the couch, could erase the damage. Like that was their olive branch. I threw the card away. In October, something strange happened. I was invited to speak on a remote panel for women in small business operations. Nothing big, just a 45-minute Zoom hosted by a Chamber of Commerce in Utica. But someone at the Albany Business Journal was listening in, and a week later, I got a call asking if they could profile me as a local up-and-comer in solo consulting. At first, I thought it was a joke. When I realized it was real, I hesitated. I didn't want attention, but Grant encouraged me. "You don't have to tell them everything," he said, "but your story might help someone." So I did it. I kept it professional, talked about layoffs, pivoting, starting small. I never mentioned my parents. I never said the words homeless or car, but I think people read between the lines. The article ran in early November. That's when I got a text from my cousin Tessa. "Your mom saw the article. She's losing her mind." I didn't respond, but curiosity got the better of me, and I checked Facebook. My mom had posted a link to the article with a caption that read, "So proud of our daughter. Always knew she'd do amazing things." I sat staring at the screen for a long time. My hand shook with rage. They weren't proud of me when I was sleeping in the car. They weren't proud of me when I begged them for my own money back. But now that I was something they could show off to their friends, they were proud. I didn't comment. I didn't call. But I did screenshot it, just to remind myself, because people like that will rewrite history if you let them. They'll gaslight you into believing the couch was your idea, that you misunderstood, that it was always love. But I remember what happened. I remember, and I wasn't done yet. I let my parents' Facebook posts simmer in silence. I didn't block them. I didn't comment. I knew that silence would do more damage than screaming ever could. They needed me to validate their version of events. They needed me to play along, but I wasn't going to. I was too busy building. By December, Redline Consulting had 4 long-term clients and a few rotating short-term contracts. I hired a virtual assistant out of Syracuse, just part-time, but it still felt wild. Me, someone who had cried in the back of a Honda in a Target parking lot just 9 months before, now giving direction and managing a business. I bought a cheap but sturdy couch, and when it was delivered, I sat on it for an hour just breathing. Not because it was luxurious. It wasn't. But because no one could take it from me. It wasn't bought with someone else's pain. It was mine. In late January, I got an invitation I didn't expect. My cousin Tessa was getting married in April. She was one of the few people in my extended family I actually liked. We used to sneak wine coolers into each other's bedrooms during holidays and talk trash about our parents. The wedding was going to be in Beacon, at a pretty little event space near the water. Small, 75 guests. My parents were going to be there. The idea of seeing them again after all this time made my stomach churn. I called Tessa. "Are you sure you want me there?" "Are you kidding?" she said. "You're my favorite person in the entire family. And honestly, if you don't show, it'll just give Aunt Marlo more room to play victim." I exhaled. "Okay, I'll come." "Good. And hey, don't dress like you're trying to be polite. Make it unforgettable." That became the theme of the next 3 months. Unforgettable. I didn't want revenge in the dramatic, scorched earth kind of way. I didn't want to scream at them in front of people or humiliate them with secrets. That's never been my style. I wanted them to feel what I felt the day I realized I couldn't trust them anymore. Small, out of place, quietly shut out of something they once assumed was theirs. So I made a plan. First, I hired a stylist, not someone fancy, just a sharp-eyed woman named Lydia, who ran a personal shopping business out of Albany. I told her I needed something timeless, elegant, expensive-looking, but not over the top. We landed on a deep emerald dress with clean lines and a subtle slit, hair swept back, bold lipstick, small but striking jewelry. When I looked in the mirror that day, I barely recognized myself, but not because I looked different. I looked complete. I also brought a date. No, not Grant. He had someone, and even if he hadn't, it would have been complicated. Instead, I asked a fellow consultant I'd met during a previous contract, a guy named Julian. He was tall, calm, funny, and had the kind of dry charm that made people lean in. He knew the situation. "Do you want the old flame you reconnected with vibe, or more unbothered goddess with arm candy energy?" I laughed a little. Both. The wedding was beautiful. Warm spring air, flowers and soft pinks and whites, jazz quartet in the corner. The moment I walked into the courtyard, heads turned. I saw my parents sitting near the center aisle. My mom's smile faltered the moment she saw me. She stood up halfway, like she wanted to say something, but I nodded politely and kept walking. No embrace, no small talk. I took my seat next to Julian and didn't look back. Throughout the reception, I mingled. I didn't mention my business unless someone asked, but word had traveled. Apparently, the article in the Albany Business Journal had made its way downstairs, and a few guests brought it up. "You're doing amazing things," someone's aunt gushed. "Your parents must be so proud." I smiled, glass of champagne in hand. They haven't seen much of it, unfortunately. We've been distant. I left it there. No rant, no details, just a firm little truth bomb for anyone willing to read between the lines. My mom kept glancing at me during dinner. Once she stood up to come over, but I turned and leaned into Julian, laughing at something he said. She sat back down. It was petty, I knew it, but it felt right. Let them sit in discomfort. Let them watch the woman they underestimated move through a room with quiet power they didn't give her. Let them realize they don't know me anymore. Later that evening, I walked past their table on my way to the restroom. My dad looked up at me, his expression unreadable. My mom gave me a strange smile. "You look beautiful," she said, her voice soft. "Careful." "Thank you," I replied, with the same calm she used when she told me she'd spent my money. She opened her mouth like she was going to say more, but I didn't wait. I just kept walking. After the wedding, I got an email. It was from my mom. Subject line, "Let's talk." I didn't open it. I archived it. A few weeks later, a mutual friend told me they'd heard from Elena that I was cold to them at the wedding, and that she just doesn't understand what she did wrong. That confirmed it. Nothing had changed. They hadn't learned. They wanted reconciliation without responsibility, forgiveness without accountability. But I had learned something crucial. Closure doesn't require participation. By the time summer rolled around, I'd moved into a slightly larger apartment in downtown Albany. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a small balcony with space for herbs and a tiny bistro table. I'd added 2 team members to Redline Consulting, and we were planning a fall client summit in Rochester. One morning, I walked into my kitchen, poured myself coffee, and sat on my very own couch, soft gray, clean lines, a little saggy from use. The sunlight hit just right, warm and golden, and I smiled. Not because I had destroyed anyone, but because I had saved myself. Quietly, thoroughly, completely. And they could never take that from me.